The market reaction to your mini budget of the 23rd of September was obviously quite dramatic. Some would say violent. You're very experienced in financial markets. Did that reaction surprise you?
Well, I think there were lots of things going on. Obviously, the mini budget itself was bold, and we were focusing on growth, and we wanted to reduce taxes. And I think elements of the market may have been surprised at the boldness of the package. But of course, there was also a global context. It's very important for viewers to remember that at the beginning of last week, the dollar was hitting highs, 20-year highs against the euro, 50-year highs against the yen. The Bank of Japan had to intervene to support the yen. And this is all against the background of the Fed, the US Fed, really pushing up interest rates. So there was a global picture. I don't deny that there was some market reaction to the budget because it was a bold offer.
But the timing of it, the fact that you gave your mini budget and then within 24 hours the pound had fallen quite a lot and then it fell very dramatically on the Monday morning.
That's right.
Doesn't that allow your enemies to paint this mini budget as radical and extreme?
I don't think it was extreme. I think it was very much what we decided to focus on. It was bold. We hadn't done anything like that before.
A bit too bold in retrospect?
Well, we reversed this whole cycle of a 70-year high tax take. You will know the figures. I mean, the IMF were predicting the lowest growth rate of the G7. We had the highest tax take in 70 years. And the path we were on was unsustainable. And I thought that what we should do is actually try and reduce taxes, and that's what we've done. And nobody's arguing that we should put up corporation tax. Nobody's arguing that we shouldn't have reversed the national insurance increase. In fact, Labour have said that they would stick to that. And I think we've shifted the debate. And I'm hopeful that over the next few weeks, things will stabilise. But also, we'll be able to get growth in this economy and to have incentives. And there were so many other packages, Liam, policies about the enterprise investment scheme, allowing people to invest more in that, the annual investment allowance, sticking to £1 million so that companies can actually get investing and not be...
But what would you have done differently in retrospect, Chancellor? No Chancellor, no Prime Minister, especially when they're incoming, mid-term, if you like, wants to see a market reaction that dramatic. What could you have done differently in retrospect?
Well, I think there were things, it was a very quick time that we did it. And also you've got to remember the context. I mean, what was extraordinary about that month was that we had a new government and also we had the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So we had a nation in mourning. And then literally, I think 4 days after the funeral, we had the mini budget. It was high speed, high pressure environment. And we could have got, as David Cameron used to say, prepared the pitch a bit better. But what you've got to remember is that 5 weeks ago, we were in the middle of an energy crisis. And the energy intervention actually was the most significant thing that we did as part of the mini budget. That was the bit that I think we showed real leadership about an energy crisis where people were facing £6,500 potentially in their bills next year. And we intervened.
Surely, in retrospect, it wasn't the fact that you wanted to lower the top rate of tax from 45 to 40%. It was 40% throughout the new Labour years,
exactly
throughout
right.
Tony Blair's
Exactly
time in
right.
office, almost all of Gordon Brown's time in office. It was about the timing. It was the timing that you got wrong in the middle of a cost of living crisis to lower the top rate of tax for the top 2% of earners. Surely you'd have done that differently.
Well, we've postponed that. We're not going to abolish the top rate. We've listened. And we always listen. I mean, I remember the 2012 budget, there were lots of measures there that were reversed, but we listened on that. But that was just one measure in a very bold and comprehensive
It was bound
package.
to catch the eye, though, wasn't it? You're a very politically astute person. Why do you think you made that political mistake as a team? Number 10, number 11, all the advisors?
I think what we wanted to do was to set the debate, and it was something that I was very focused on trying to make the UK a competitive place. So you will know, I mean, you've got Irish relations. The top rate in Ireland is 40%. As you said, for 20 years, the top rate in this country was 40%. And we thought this is the way to make Britain more competitive, because ultimately we want to grow the pie, as opposed to just having an argument about redistribution.
So you make no apologies for the policy, but you acknowledge the timing could have been better?
I think that's why we've postponed it. And we haven't postponed it, we've actually decided not to proceed with it. And we're going to focus on the bits of the plan that we can deliver. And it was a really, really good really good measures in the budget. We reduced the IR35. Lots of people were really
freelance contractors. That's
for
right.
freelance contractors, we're very happy about that. The enterprise investment scheme, we've prolonged that. We've allowed people to put more money into that. We're trying to attract business into the UK. And those are the sorts of measures that lots of people, if you looked at the business organisations, they were all saying this is really good. We've finally got a government that gets it on growth. And
like the CBI, the IOD.
The CBI, the IOD, the FSB, the Federation of Small Business, really happy about axing the increase in national insurance. Because as employers, they have to pay national insurance. It's a kind of jobs tax. And they were very, very happy about that. So there was lots in the budget that was good, that was pro-growth, that was welcomed, and I felt that the 45p rate was overshadowing the entirety of the really good measures that we were announcing, and that's why we decided to postpone, to essentially to not proceed with the abolition of the rate.
Now, back in March, Rishi Sunak's spring statement, it seems a long time ago, but as is the convention, he uprated benefits by the previous September's rate of inflation. The rate of inflation in September 2021 was 3.1%, as you know. Well, we're now, in the autumn of 2022, we've got 9.9% inflation. Surely it's fair to uprate benefits again by the rate of inflation, which is 9 to 10%.
You're right, it's a very high inflation rate, and wages, I think, are going up at 5% lower than the CPI. But I haven't made any decisions. There's a consultation, and the DWP Secretary is looking at what the policy is going forward, and we're having discussions with them about that.
Do you think you can afford politically not to raise benefits by the rate of inflation? There's been quite a lot of ferment and discontent, even among senior MPs, in response to the notion you may not uprate by inflation, even among senior cabinet ministers.
Well, there's always a healthy debate about these things, but I haven't committed to any particular. I haven't made any decision because we're doing a consultation at the moment and we're reviewing the policy.
Interest rates around the world are going up, of course, as we retreat from the ultra-low rates of the 2008 financial crisis. What is your message to young homeowners here in Birmingham, across the UK, who have bought a house, they've staked everything, they're working really hard, it's so hard to get on the housing ladder, they know they've got to refinance their mortgage at some rate, at some point in the future, their fix is only 1 or 2 years. What's your message to them, Chancellor, as interest rates rise, if they're worried about losing that house they've worked so hard for?
I think one of the things that we've got to look at is the cost of living in the round. So there's obviously mortgages, and people are very focused on that. And for people actually entering the market, in terms of young people, that was one of the reasons why we've lifted the nil band of stamp duty. So it used to be up to £125,000, you wouldn't pay any stamp duty. But of course, many houses, even a flat, in Birmingham is going to cost a lot more than £125,000. So that's why we doubled the nil band, so that up to £250,000 you're not paying stamp duty. So for young people, that.
But if you've already bought the house, if you financed yourself at ultra low interest rates are going up, and you might lose your house. I
think the focus there is also on what we're doing on energy costs. We're trying to reduce energy costs. I think we're trying to make sure that people can grow their incomes by growing the economy. I think interest rates, you're right, are going up across the world. I'm hopeful that inflation will come down, and then we won't see huge interest rate rises. But you're right to say it's a global phenomenon. But we've made interventions already on energy. You've got the £400 discount. You've got we're putting down income tax. That was the whole point, of allowing people to have more of their own money. And I think our tax reduction measures does mean that more people, and the energy intervention means that there's more money in people's pockets. I totally understand your point about interest rates.
Isn't it tempting to point to the fact that the Bank of England, according to many people in financial markets, many commentators, has been behind the curve? The markets expected a 75 basis points rise the day before your mini budget. A lot of people would say the fact that they only raised by 50, with some members voting for a quarter point increase only, that was another reason why the pound fell so sharply.
There were lots of things, and you make a good point about that. All I'd say about the bank is that I get on very well with Andrew Bailey. I think he's a really good professional. I think he's a very focused, highly intelligent man. And I think it's really important that as a Chancellor of the Exchequer, I have a good relationship with the gun of the bank, and I'm very, very focused on that.
You're both historians, of course.
We are both historians, and we were both at the same university, not at the same time, I hasten to add. But he's got a real interest and depth of knowledge about the economy, about...
But saying inflation was transitory even last autumn when all the market signals were pointing to much, much higher inflation?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think people made a lot of calls at the end of last year, which, were belied by Vladimir Putin. I mean, what has been driving inflation, among other things, has been very, very high energy costs. And the energy issue has been made even worse by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I mean, there's no question about that. And actually, in the autumn of last year, it wasn't inevitable that he was, I mean, nobody thought he was going to invade until the actual day of the invasion. Which was,
inflation was a 30-year high before he invaded.
It was high, but everyone thought that it would come down. Do you see what I mean?
Some of us didn't.
And then you did, but lots of people thought, and I remember talking to economists at the time, and they were saying it was going to peak in May. Do you remember that?
Maybe you're talking to the wrong economist.
Yeah, maybe I should have talked to you. But there was a view that it would peak in the spring and then come down. And of course, with the Russian invasion, you could argue that's what kept the inflation higher. But you're right. I mean, other people were saying it was going to be higher for longer.
Final question. You've said now that you are going to bring forward the fiscal assessment in conjunction with the Office of Budget Responsibility. You said in your speech yesterday that will happen shortly. Is shortly before the 23rd?
So shortly is the 23rd. I mean, people reading the runes and parsing.
So it is going to be the 23rd of November. You're not bringing that fiscal
it's
plan
going to be
forward.
It's going to be the 23rd of November.
Okay. And finally, Chancellor, is government at the very top, the very apex of power, tougher than you thought it might be?
Well, it's, I've been in cabinet for 2 years nearly, and people forget that. And we had the fuel crisis. We've had various steel crises. I've sort of rolled with the punches, as they say. There's a lot of scrutiny in my job, rightly. There's also the market element. People are looking at what we're doing. But also, I'm very convinced that we have to have a different path. The 70-year high tax rate was ridiculous. The tax being a 70-year high of the GDP, that's not sustainable, especially when you're getting low growth. So I was very, very focused on getting a high growth agenda and actually trying to reduce taxes so that people could keep more of the money they earn.
Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, thanks so much for talking to us here.
Thank you, Liam.
On GB News.
Thank you. Take care.